Have you ever said yes to something when someone has asked you to help with something or asked you to do something with them? When inside your whole body is screaming no, your chest tightens, your stomach churns, but you just can't muster up the courage or the strength to say no, thank you. When you agree to something that deep down you either just don't want to do or just don't have the space or the capacity to do. That's not just people pleasing. It's actually a survival reflex. You hear about fight, flight, and freeze pretty commonly, but this is what we call the fawn response or the appease response. It's a nervous system survival state where your brain believes that pleasing other people is the safest way to stay connected and to get our needs met. What if I told you that that very reflex, the automatic yes, is at the root of your self-abandonment? This video is a detox for your yes reflex, and it starts right now. People pleasing is not a flaw in your personality. It's a nervous system response to perceived threat. When you were young, if love or acceptance felt conditional, we learned to appease others. And this is the fawn response, one of the lesser known and talked about survival reflexes. It's actually how your body protected you. But now, as an adult, we have to ask the question, at what cost? So many of us feel overextended in our lives. We're running around trying to meet everyone else's needs, trying to keep up and do all the things for everyone else. But it can cause so much overwhelm and exhaustion, and it can really dysregulate our nervous system. You learn to shrink yourself, to neglect your own needs, to apologize for your very existence. But that pattern ends today. When you say yes reflexively too often, you're reinforcing beliefs and patterns that are keeping you stuck. Beliefs like, my needs don't matter, saying no makes me unsafe. If I don't meet the needs or requests of other people, they will reject or abandon me. Or even reinforce beliefs that we're not doing enough, or that we're not showing up for other people, and that we can even believe it's selfish to say no. So how do we break this? We don't just use willpower. And it's not just about being more courageous. It's actually starting to rewrite some of your limiting beliefs around this, allowing yourself to believe that you are enough just as you are, and that it's okay to set boundaries. And actually, it's critical that you set boundaries, because when we don't have boundaries in our own lives, boundaries for ourselves, but also boundaries with others, then we never truly can distinguish what's ours from other people. And we end up carrying so much emotional weight and weight for other people. And it really weighs us down. But we have to rewrite this not only in our beliefs, but also in our body. Because most of the time, what's happening when someone asks you to do something or asks you to help them with something is that our body immediately has a reaction, and we get triggered. Our body gets activated or triggered into the survival reflex, and we kind of go into a freeze state or into a fawn state, which is much like if you're driving at night and there comes a deer across the road. It's like that deer in the headlights look. We automatically and instinctively say yes, just because we believe that that's going to help us with connection with this other person, and also to appease them so that we don't have to worry about them being upset with us in any way. So the first part of this is learning some micro shifts that we can use where we can feel safer in our bodies and more empowered to say no with kindness, but also with firmness. The next time you feel pressured to say yes, take a pause. Put your hand on your belly and one on your heart and take a deep breath. And check in and ask yourself if it feels in alignment, if it's something you really want to do, or if it's even something that you have the space in your life to do. This 3-second pause, it interrupts your automatic response and it creates space for your own authenticity. And it's like any other skill set. We have to practice it so that it gets stronger and so that we can more easily hear those messages internally. Because if we've been wired to meet the needs of other people and to people please or to fawn, of course, initially it's going to feel most comfortable to immediately say yes, because that's what we have always done. And saying no can feel terrifying because even if in the moment we say no, sometimes then we flip into a response where we start to over explain ourselves, or we feel like we have to give a lot of justifications or reasons why we can't. Or later, we start feeling a lot of guilt or shame around saying no because we're worried that others will be upset with us in some way. But it all begins with starting small. Start saying no to things that are low stakes, things that more easily you're able to say no to, even if historically you've always said yes. Take a look at your life and take inventory. Where are there places where you can start saying no and practice this skill? Things like declining an invite to events that you end up dreading but force yourself to go to, or no to taking on additional activities or tasks. A lot of us can look at our children's activities and our schools where there's always a demand for people to step up and help. It's not that we're not going to help ever. It's just that we need to be very intentional about where we are putting our energy and focus and start pulling back our power and being able to say no when it no longer feels aligned. Or if we're in a season of our life where we just don't have as much energy, space, and capacity to take on these additional responsibilities. This truly does build your nervous system capacity for boundary setting. A lot of us don't even realize that we have porous boundaries. We've never really taken a look to see in our lives where we have set boundaries, not only with other people, but also with ourselves. Because when we have this fawn response, sometimes it's hard to know the difference between what's ours and what's others, because we traditionally have taken on so much for other people. Another really simple practice you can do is mirror work, where every day you take just a few moments, whether you're getting ready for the day or if you stop and pause before you walk out the door, and look in the mirror, look into your eyes and say and affirm, my needs matter. And it's okay for me to say no when it doesn't feel aligned. And this might feel a little uncomfortable in the beginning, but rewiring our beliefs truly starts with consistency and repetition. And when we look in that mirror and we look in our own eyes, we are speaking directly to the subconscious part of us where these patterns have been solidified and repeated again and again. But spoken truth rewires subconscious beliefs and patternings. Another really good practice is doing an inner child check-in. Because these patterns were created in childhood, and that's the part of you who doesn't feel safe to say no, it can be really helpful when you're tempted to give that automatic yes or to start over giving to others, to pause and ask, what does the little me need right now? This is a part of the reparenting work where we can go in and change our experience by working with that younger inner child part of us that never felt safe to say no or to advocate for her own needs. So go slow, be kind, and take it one step at a time. These patterns weren't created overnight. And so sometimes it does take time to consistently show up for ourselves and make new choices and create more space to show up differently for ourselves in order to rewrite these beliefs long term. And please don't fall into the trap of shaming yourself if you find yourself in those situations where you have an opportunity to say no in authenticity, but you end up in that old pattern of saying yes. Look at it as feedback. It's just an opportunity to learn and grow. Because sometimes we're going to be able to stand in our power and we're going to feel really good, like, wow, I'm really changing this pattern in my life. And other times it's going to be more difficult and we aren't going to be able to do it. But either way, it's just an opportunity to practice the skill and learn more about ourselves and those parts of us that are still struggling to put ourselves and our own needs first. One of the final things that can be really helpful in these micro shifts we're doing is to have a completion loop. After you say no, to close the loop and internally say, it's okay if this disappoints others. I choose myself and my own needs. And you're not just breaking an old habit, you're building an entirely new identity. And so we have to reinforce for ourselves that other people's displeasure does not mean we've done anything wrong, because that sometimes is the hardest part of all this. Even learning to set boundaries. Many of us start the practice of setting boundaries and it feels good initially, but it's not just setting the boundary, it's holding the boundary. And that can be the hardest part because, of course, people are going to push back when we start showing up in a new way. It's unfamiliar to them. That dynamic in our relationship is new and it feels unfamiliar. So, of course, they're going to try and use various different tactics, mostly subconsciously, to realign with the old patterning and the old dynamic. And that's where some of us falter, because in those moments, that guilt, that shame, that feeling unsafe in the body really kicks in. So, again, show up with kindness and curiosity instead of judgment and criticism, and allow this to be a learning and growing experience. Sometimes the easiest place to start is to actually just start setting boundaries for ourselves. So that can mean just asking yourself, what are the things that I will allow for myself, and what are the things I no longer wish to allow in my life? And start trying to set the boundaries for ourselves and hold those boundaries first before we start working on the external boundaries with other people. Because the more in alignment we are, and the more we're showing up for ourselves and meeting our own needs consistently and repeatedly, the easier it will become for us then to start doing that with others, because we have trust in self that if we set a boundary, we can keep it and hold it. And if this stirred something within you and you're ready to start setting healthier boundaries and stop self abandoning and take your power back and really work to detox this people pleasing pattern that you have carried around for so long, take the first step and download my free Return to Yourself hypnotherapy audio track. The link is down below. We just have to start to reconnect to ourselves and find safety in our body and in our nervous system so that we can feel more empowered to start changing these ingrained patterns that have been playing out for most of our lives. And I'm sure you can look around your own life and see people who effortlessly set those boundaries and say no. And it's not that they're being unkind, it's just that they're resolute. They know who they are and they know what they have the space and the capacity to show up for. And so it feels effortless for them to say no. And people respect their no. And that's the skill set that we're working on, is that we have to learn to respect our own authenticity and our own energy. And this is a really important practice that most of us missed in childhood because we never really had the agency to say no. Your no is sacred and your yes is sacred. And your worth was never up for negotiation. Let this be the first unshakable yes that you give to yourself. Take back your power and begin the process of healing this pattern within you. It is the most profound work you can do to start to show up for yourself, and not only to decide what you want, but also the things that are no longer aligned and that you do not want. Thank you for showing up today, and thank you for doing this work. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.